Hello everyone, in this lesson we will be discussing the discussion section of your capstone project. To demonstrate your understanding of course outcome number 1, you will describe key findings. For course outcome 2, you will explain how global perspectives could further enhance understanding on the topic. For course outcome 3, you will substantiate key conclusions and identify research limitations to inform next steps in research. And for course outcome 4, you will use discipline-specific terminology, definitions, and conventions to demonstrate effective verbal and written communication across a range of audiences. Because the discussion section is where the project is all really pulled together, in this section you will indicate your achievement of multiple aspects across the course outcomes. This includes, for course outcome 1, formulating key conclusions by contextualizing data interpretations with relevant research and applying a theoretical framework. For course outcome 2, integrate relevant global perspectives to substantiate the global relevance of the research conclusions. For course outcome 3, contextualize data interpretations using credible research and a theoretical framework. Propose potential solutions for addressing potential implications of study limitations. And integrate findings and context to substantiate relevant recommendations for next steps in research of the focus topic. And for course outcome 4, enhance best practices for written and oral professional communication, including grammar and syntax, clarity, terminology, language, citations, and narration with the inclusion of visuals to further support audience understanding. In your discussion draft, you will have the opportunity to work towards these final demonstrations by justifying the relevance of data interpretations to address a research question, contextualizing interpretations of findings using external credible research and a theoretical framework, integrating global perspectives into discussion through resource and implications of research, justifying the potential impacts of the limitations of the project, justifying recommendations for next steps to deepen understanding of the focus topic, summarizing the key conclusions from the project into a concluding statement, and using APA formatting guidelines and discipline-specific terminology, definitions, and conventions to demonstrate effective verbal and written communication across a range of audiences. The goal of this section is to contextualize your interpretations and set the stage for next steps moving forward. So, looking at your findings from your project, the information that you shared in your results section, and now is the time that you get to really interpret your findings. What those findings show, what they mean, and use existing research, other external research as resources that you cite to support your findings. This is where you will highlight where your findings align with what is currently known versus contradicts those pieces. Like the introduction, this will be a heavily cited section of your project. You will also cover the limitations of your study. This includes the factors that were challenging in the design of your project. This is not looking at human error pieces, but really looking at limitations of the study itself and recommendations for future research as well. So anything that came up, any ideas that were sparked, what is the next step of furthering understanding about this topic? And finally, you will offer a conclusion, a summary of your project overall, and the key take-home message from your project of what this all means and why it matters. So what I mean by these contextualized interpretations is, again, what your data show, and you will provide context in the format of credible research to support those interpretations, and also be really mindful of how your data align with your research question. You want to always be coming back to that research question and make sure that this is the common thread that you're addressing through each section of your project. And if you had a hypothesis in your project, then you also would want to show how your data support or reject your hypothesis. So included in this section, again, are the interpretations of the data substantiated by external credible literature, explaining those contextualized interpretations, giving context of what your results mean. How does your data address your research question? How do your data address your research question? Do the data support your hypothesis? Do your data match other research? How is there conflict or contradiction with your findings versus that in other research? And again, citing the figures and graphs and charts that you have for your results can be helpful in this space as you interpret your data. For the limitations, you want to really look at any limiting factors. This is what might be impacting the data. Examples include sample size or access to information. And also, this is where you're really addressing what the implications are for the data. So if this was a factor, if you had a small sample size, what does that mean for the data that you are then representing in your project? How might your data have been skewed in one direction or the other because of that potential limitation? So rather than reports of human error, application error, these are really regarding the design of the study. For your recommendations, you want to provide recommendations for the next steps of exploration into the focus topic. So what questions remain? What should be further validated? Should there be replication of the work that you have done? How can it be extended and taken further? You're really explaining the future research that could be done to explore this topic, building on the work from your project and justifying the relevance of that. And you're presenting why that matters and how your work sets that up well to really address these key ideas that are important. And finally, you have your conclusion, part of your discussion section. And this is the summary of the main take-home message from your work. This section includes a concluding summary of the findings and clear statements for each of the key takeaways from the work. You want to represent the potential significance of your findings and really highlight that big takeaway. For this section, you want to, as always, use your APA formatting and really be mindful of the organization. So again, as you present the information, you want to do so in the same order as it was presented in previous sections, following from the introduction to the methods and results and down to the discussion. And again, similar to the introduction section, you will have a lot of citations in this section, citing a minimum of 6 credible research articles. How this section might look for an internship project is that this might be really the closure piece in a scholarly qualitative article. So this might look like a discussion that you would see in a peer-reviewed article. This might also look like a book chapter, a more narrative written document, or potentially an outline for a documentary film or the film itself in your recorded presentation. So all of these pieces are options of how this might play out, how you might really wrap up your project given a different format of the internship. Because with the internship, you still are addressing a specific research question, finding your data, and then summarizing what all of this means and why it matters. Here are some references for you, and please reach out to your instructor with any questions.